Hi, everybody. Wayne Parham, Lone Star Audiofest. I'm here with Mike Lundy of Uilleam Audio. And Mike, how you doing today?
Oh, pretty good. Yourself?
I'm doing pretty good too. We were talking the other day, and I want everybody to understand how to pronounce the name of your company. Tell us how to pronounce it and tell us what it means.
Okay, it's pronounced Uilleam. It's spelled Uilleam, and it's Old German, Scots Gaelic, and Irish Gaelic for William. Now, as I understand it, the Old German and the Irish Gaelic pronunciation is Uilleam, while the Scots pronunciation is Oyam. Uh, I have picked that name because it's my middle name. William is my middle name. And when I tried to set up the company and get a .com and all that, I couldn't get anything as a Mike's Audio or any Mike's this or Williams that or anything else. So I started looking for different ways, changes, things that I could do. And this was one that came up when I just did a search for, okay, how is William pronounced or spelled in some other languages? And since my heritage is German, Scots, and Irish, and a little bit of Cherokee Indian. I don't know Cherokee, so I couldn't use William for that one. Uh, Uilleam is what I came up with, so that's what I've been using.
Yeah, thanks for telling us. I just think that's so cool because as long as I've known you and I've seen that name, I thought that is such a unique name. It's so interesting, but I didn't know the story, and that's really cool. It gives you an exotic name, but now we know the background behind it. So yeah, tell me. What I want everybody to know is a little bit about you, your history, your growing up. What got you into hi-fi. Tell us a little bit about you, please.
Well, I grew up around music from as far back as I can remember. My father was an electronics engineer with Heath Company, the old Heath kit type stuff, and then Electro Voice. And so he basically was a designer of what today I guess we would call a production engineer, a manufacturing engineer, but he also did some other design work, making things work that they could make them. And he was the troubleshooter for any problems that they had to keep the products uh, being made properly. So I grew up around that. We always had music in the house. I guess he would be called an audiophile today because in his LP collection was about half a dozen different test records, test LPs for setting everything up, which back then I didn't have a clue what those were, but hey, we would listen to it. I had my own little portable record player from the time I was probably about 4 or 5 years old. And a lot of times to take it outside on the front porch and just play records.
You
And
bet.
dad was also a musician. He played guitar and he built his own guitar amps and such like that. And then when I got into school and grammar school, everybody had to take music and we all learned to play recorders. Then later on in the fifth grade, I got into the elementary school band, played tuba for my first year and switched to trumpet in sixth grade, and then stuck with that throughout high school. My brother and sister also were in the high school band. My brother was a drummer, my sister a clarinet player. So we've grown up with music all our lives, all around us.
Yeah, you sounds like it. You had music all around you everywhere. Yeah, tell me a little
Mm.
more about what your dad did. What exactly is a production engineer?
Uh, he was basically a non-degreed engineer. So he did all of his engineering coursework through correspondence course after he got out of the Air Force in the 1950s. And then the design engineers would develop the designs for the products, but then it was his job to make it to where they could actually produce that particular design and get it to work. And when they had problems, and he would be the one doing the troubleshooting, making changes, adjustments, that type of deal, so that it worked the way they wanted it to.
Uh-huh, sure. So you had both the music and the instruments, and then you also had, manufacturing around you as you were growing up. This has all been your influences.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Yeah, so tell me a little more about after your school days and those early influences, where'd you go from there?
Well, after I graduated college, I was an officer in the Army. And when I got to my first permanent duty station, I bought my first official um, audiophile-esque unit, if you will, a system. It consisted of a Rega Planer 3 turntable with a gold ring cartridge, an NAD 3020 amplifier, a pair of KEF 303.3 speakers, and then I still had the Electrovoice EV7A speakers that my father had given me when I went to college.
Good stuff.
And then uh, after a couple of years of playing that, I decided to get a uh, dual tape deck, cassette tape deck, and a reel to reel. And the main reason I got the reel to reel was I really didn't care for all the pops and clicks, and I hadn't learned how to clean the records yet. So I would take a new record and I would record it onto my reel to reel, and then that's what I would play back, and I'd leave the records sitting in their cases.
Sure. I did the same thing. That now that you mention that, I would take my records, put them on reel to reel, and that's what I'd play over and over again so I didn't wear out my records.
Yeah.
Well, that's
And
very
that
cool.
stayed.
So tell us a little bit about in the modern days. I know that you've started building loudspeakers and whatnot. Tell us what got you into that.
Well, when we moved from Knoxville, Tennessee over to Tulsa, Oklahoma, then some of my gear didn't come with me. My big speakers and my turntables and everything. My wife said, "You aren't listening to those records that much, so we're not going to move them." So and I don't want those big speakers. I want the little Bose cubes. So I gave all that stuff away to a friend. And then when we got out here, we had the home theater stuff going, and she got her little cubes, but they weren't Bose. They were Klipsch's little satellite sub Klipsch system. And we had those for a while, and then I ended up going back to more stand-mounted speakers. Went to a Klipsch RB 82, something like that, the 8-inch drivers that you get from Best Buy type thing. And that's what we had. And I had a pair of PSBs upstairs that I really liked. Then I came across the idea of DIY just by searching the web. And I came across the GR Research website, which is Danny Ritchie's website, and thought, well, maybe I might build one of those, but I'm not really that great at building cabinets. I kind of did some rough carpentry work when I was younger, but not finished carpentry work. I never was that great with the finished carpentry stuff. But GR has a forum on Audio Circle that everybody is very helpful, and they said, we'll help you get along, post your pictures, just talk about your builds. And so I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And I did. I built one of their small desktop speakers, and it kind of looked like something somebody would do as a first attempt. It was just stained Baltic birch plywood, had some tear out here and there. It sounded really good. So then I built another pair, but I tried my hand at veneering for the first time. And when I built that pair, then I brought them downstairs to do a comparison with my wife to let her listen to uh, the normal ones, the Klipsch's, and then these DIY speakers. So when she likes violin music, so I was doing using Bach Violin Concerto by Hilary Hahn, and played it with the normal, with the clip speakers. And she said, "Yeah, okay." I said, "What do you think?" "Yeah, okay, I like those. Those are our speakers. Yeah, it's pretty good." So then I put those DIY speakers in, played it, and I looked over at her. She was doing this number. And So when that was done, she goes, I like that. Build me a pair, but make them bigger. Now, this is the person who made me get rid of my big speakers because she wanted little cubes, but now she wanted bigger speakers. So uh, I did. I built another one of GR's designs, which is a floor standing transmission line MTM style speaker. She picked out the veneer for it, which is a South American or rosewood, uh, Santos rosewood, also called Palfero. And that's what the veneer is on it. And then I decided, well, what am I going to do for a finish on this? And I kind of like the idea of French polish, which is a very, very old finishing technique that just uses shellac and alcohol and a little bit of oil and lots of elbow grease. So I didn't know how to do it, but I bought a DVD course from a luthier on building and finishing a guitar. And I used those techniques to learn how to do the French polishing. And so that's what's in our living room. And it's been there. Well, it went in service in 2014 is when I finally finished it. And so it's been there playing ever since.
Yeah, that's
Then
amazing
I've,
because I understand that that shellac is super labor intensive.
yeah, 500 to 800 layers, microscopic layers went on.
Wow.
The technique uses what they call a half-pound cut. That's where you put a half a pound of shellac flakes and dissolve it into 1 gallon of alcohol.
Wow.
So so each pass just puts a very, very small amount down. So you build it up and then you rub it in, then you build it up, then you rub it in, then you build it up, and at about every 3 to 5 times, then you come back with just pure alcohol to smooth everything out, rub it down, uh, burnish it in. And that's like 1 round. And you're going to do anywhere from 5+ rounds, depending on how deep you want the shine to be. So it took me 3 months, nights and weekends to get that finish on. Very nice finish. I've also done it at lesser sheen levels, but it is very labor intensive. And I pretty much only do that on some of my own speakers because nobody's going to pay me to do that, all that work. And I don't blame them because there are companies that do offer that, and it adds anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 per speaker
Oh, sure.
if you're talking about floor stander for that labor.
Well, sure. I could see why.
And
Yeah, very, very labor
and so
intensive, very expensive.
over the years, I've been experimenting with different types and learning different types of products to use. And pretty much now I use a couple of different products. I either use a hard wax oil that will get a sheen anywhere from a matte to about a semi-gloss, and I can put a ceramic coating on top of that, or I use a UV cured resin
Very cool.
that gives you more of a traditional uh, urethane or lacquer type of looking and feeling finish,
Sure, sure. Well,
and
yeah,
it
I
doesn't take
definitely
anywhere
wanna
near
hear
as much
more
effort.
about, the different woods and the different finishes that you do, but back up for a minute, if you would, and tell us a little more about how you entered, this world of building speakers and other things. Tell us. Yeah, I remember when I met you, it was, I don't know, probably 2012 or something. Tell us more about that era.
As 2014, actually, that was the very first
Okay.
Lone Star Audiofest I ever attended. And I found out about that through the same Audio Circle website where we were doing the builds for GR Research. Because someone said, hey, Lone Star Audiofest is coming up in the threads. I wonder what that is. I guess I'll go down to Dallas and check it out. So I went down to that. And then the next year was the first year that I actually showed up and exhibited anything.
Well, yes, I can remember those days, when you were coming. Tell us what was the first thing that you brought to exhibit?
Well, the first thing that I bought was a pair of, he called them wedgies, which was an open baffle uh, design speaker and it was sitting on top of open baffle subwoofers. In 2014, at that show, when I was got to actually go around and listen to the rooms, that was the first time I was ever exposed to open baffle speakers, and the sound it just kind of captured me. I really, really liked the openness, the airiness, the expansiveness of that sound. And when I got back and had finished the other speakers, I'm going, okay, but I just finished that pair of speakers in the living room. So how am I going to get my wife to let me build another pair? When she listened to those, she said, okay, those are mine. Go build yourself something else. So I go, yes. And then I built that pair of speakers, the old smaller open baffle wedgies, which used three servo controlled 8-inch subwoofer drivers for the bass module. And that's what I showed in 2015, 2016 at Lone Star.
Yes, I
Uh,
remember us having
but
that discussion. You'd said something that you thought we were trying to figure out what open baffle you had heard, and I remember back then about the only guy that was doing open baffles was John Bush,
yeah,
and so
Manzanita.
yeah,
And the second year I brought the same mid-range and tweeter section, but I did a different bass section. Instead of three 8-inch open baffle subwoofers in an H frame, I made a design where I had used two 12-inch open baffle subwoofers in a wedge shaped design that fit the profile of the wedgies on the top. And if I move out of the way a little bit here, you can kind of see those cabinets right there.
well, they're beautiful. They're very beautiful, and I think, yeah, is you so I think you had begun to find Danny Ritchie's open baffle stuff at around that time, yes?
Yeah, that's the first ones I came, and then the wedgies were Danny's.
Yes,
He had
yes.
just he had some older ones that he had where they were used like a sealed uh, lower section and then open baffle in the top section, but only the mid-range drivers were open baffle.
I see.
The tweeter still had a cut, and then when he designed those what he called the wedgies, those were full open baffle, all the drivers top to bottom, uh 20 hertz to 20k hertz was all open baffle.
Very
And
interesting.
then he had designed it with folded baffles that were asymmetric so that you got better imaging than you normally would get with the wide baffle from an OB driver or an OV speaker. And you get to better imaging, but you still got low enough bass extension that you could reach down to a subwoofer.
Yeah,
Now, those first ones,
I remember you mentioning that the width of that the baffle, if it was wide enough, it'd go low, but then you had a problem with imaging, so the idea was to fold it, yes? Something like that?
yes. Yeah, it was to fold it. And then he did a lot of experimentation on what degree of angle, what shapes those wings needed to be. Started with both wings the same size, but then that would create cabinet resonances between them. So he did a lot of different experimentations with the different sizes and shapes, and he ended up on a asymmetric design where one wing went all the way back, and then the other wing was shorter for the mid range, and then almost and a section for the tweeter had no uh, wing at all because the wavelengths were too short. So that was the only way to not have any type of resonance setting up.
Sure,
So
I
it
can
it
see that.
looks a little different,
Yeah.
but it really works and it sounds really good. And today I use the same style. It's just I'm using his next iteration from the small wedgie, which used a 3-inch wideband drivers for the mid-range and a planar magnetic tweeter for the tweeter. It uses the same planar magnetic tweeter, but it uses 6.5-inch mid-woofers or mid-range drivers that he designed specifically for open baffle use. And then that sits on top of dual 12-inch servo sub bass units. And that's what I showed for at Lone Star for 2017, 18, and 19. And then decided, those bass units weigh 100 pounds apiece, and they're on my second floor, and I'm tired of dragging those things up and down the stairs and punching holes in the wall at the bottom of my stairs trying to get them in and out. So I decided to start going with bringing smaller speakers to the shows.
I could understand that. Well, yeah, tell us. That's super interesting. I want to hear more now about the different cabinetry you use, the different woods, finishes, and then we'll move on into tell us stuff that you make that's not loudspeakers.
Okay, well, the cabinet materials are pretty much, the base materials are usually 3/4-inch MDF and or Baltic birch, but mostly I use 3/4-inch MDFs. Depends on the cabinet itself, depends on the design. It can be anywhere from 3/4 to 1.5 inches. So that's like on your 3 pies and your 4 pies. You got the baffles on those are 1.5 inches on the 4 pies, but the sides are 3/4, the top and bottom are 3/4, the back is 3/4. That's to allow for the drivers to be recessed and to sit flush with the front. Some of those open baffle subwoofers, those have 1.5 inch walls all the way around. 1 inch baffle in the middle, and all the carcasses are all 1.5 inches, and usually 2.5 or 3-inch base out of MDF. The finishes either can be a painted finish if someone wants that, or a veneer. Normally, I use raw wood veneer, which is about 45 thousandths of an inch thick. It does have some limitations over paperback veneer. For one thing, paperback veneer, it can be very flexible. The wood is only about 10 thousandths of an inch thick on it, but you can get it in 4x8 or 5x10 sheets. So you can get things that are already laid up and you can wrap them a little easier. With the raw wood veneer, you're not going to get, it just depends on the type of wood it is, where it came from. The pieces can be anywhere from 6 inches wide to sometimes you might get some that are 20 inches wide. So if it's wide enough, then I can do a side with one piece. Otherwise, I have to lay up the veneer, stitch it together so that I get a wide enough piece of wood to be able to cover the particular side of the cabinet that I'm working on. That's the commercial. The other thing I do is I make what's called shop cut veneer. That's where I buy just a standard rough piece of lumber. And it can be anywhere from what they call 4/4, which is 1 inch thick, 1/4, 2 inch thick. And again, it can be anywhere from 6 inches wide to, depending on the species and the particular tree it came from, it might be up to 16 or 18 inches wide. I take those boards, usually I cut them to rough length because it's called resawing to make the veneer. And that's where you take a thick board and you run it through a bandsaw and you cut it into thinner slices. The largest or the thickest piece that you would have for shop cut veneer is about 1/8 of an inch thick. So I start with running it through the bandsaw, usually around 1/4 of an inch. And then I use what's called a drum sander to bring it down, to finish it down. I can either use a planer or a drum sander, depending on how much I have to take off initially to get it to the thickness I want. So when I'm doing a pair of speakers with the shop sawn veneer, usually the shop sawn veneer will be the carcass, the sides, the top, and the bottom. the front and the back will normally be that same wood, but in a solid piece. Like I did one that it was a piece of ambrosia. It's called ambrosia, spalted, figured maple. So it's maple, but each of those three things talk about a different characteristic of it. Figured maple has if figures in the grain. One of the most probably people are most familiar with would be called tiger stripe maple. And that's where you have dark and light stripes running through it.
Oh, wow.
Another might be bird's eye maple, where you've got little dark spots through it.
Right.
Ambrosia is where beetles got into the tree, and so you have some holes in there where the beetles bored in, and then you get some discoloration around and extending out from those holes. Spalting is when a fungus gets into the tree after it's dead, and that's where you get all kinds of different colors and striations and all kinds of stuff in it. Now, in this particular board, the ones I bought out of that tree, it had all three of those characteristics in one tree. So very unique. I can't build another one. People are still to this day asking me, can I build them a pair of speakers like that? And it's no, I can build you the speakers. They will sound exactly the same. They won't look the same because that tree is gone.
Right.
And
Right.
I've never seen another one like it.
Yeah, that's one thing that when you build something, it's one of one. There's no way to get that exact same veneer, that same finish, and that's something we you and I've talked about how that's pretty
Yeah.
amazing. Uh, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter how much money you spend, when you're buying something that's handmade like that, it's a one of one. So it's incredible to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And depending on what you're getting, if you're just using like a flat cut walnut, then I can make a number of different flat cut walnut speakers that look similar. They won't be
Sure.
identical
Right.
because the trees but they'll be fairly similar.
Right.
But if it's an exotic,
Right.
if it's a burl with a particular pattern or anything like that, no, you're not going to find another one anywhere that would be close to it. I can make a bunch of different burls, but they're all going to look different.
Yes.
And even when you're buying the veneer, or buying the wood and you're making your own veneer, you have to get enough at that time to do your project with some left over in case you have to replace some parts or some parts get damaged, because if you don't, by the time you go back, the load from that tree is probably gone. And the next one, even though it's walnut, it's not going to look exactly the same on the same speaker.
Sure.
So it doesn't look right when you really do that.
Yep. That's amazing stuff. That's cool. So Mike, yeah, tell me about some of the other products you make besides loudspeakers.
I started making other things that would be in your listening room. Media storage cabinets. Right now I've got LP storage cabinet that the one I've made I made it to deal with an issue that I wanted for my setup, which is I want to be able to actually see the faces of the albums as I'm going through the drawer looking at them. So I made a drawer that pulls out like if you were at a record store and you're flipping through them, you can see the whole front of the album. And I made it with 3 layers, 2 drawers for the albums, and then the top section is an open cubby that I sized for box sets. The drawers for the albums are on full extension drawer slides. So they look like you might see if you went to a record store, but you can pull them out and look at them, and you can flip through them. And when you put them back in, they're the soft close. You can either be no doors on it at all, leave it wide open, You can have a partial door where the bottom part of each of the cubbies is concealed and the top part is open so you can see the tops of the albums. Or I wanted to be able to make sure I could keep dust out of it. And so that meant a door. And that meant, okay, now what kind of door am I going to use? I could use the normal type of cabinet door, either a single door or, double doors like on your kitchen cabinets. But those require a little more room than I had for opening them up. So I ended up opting for what's called a Tambour door, which is better known as like a roll top desk,
Yeah, that's cool.
where you make those little slats, the timbres, and then the doors will roll down to completely close it, or roll up to completely open it for the door for you to pull your albums out. That is designed to where it's in a single unit, so it can be multiple units if you got more than one. It can be made with all three of the cubbies with drawers. If you didn't want the opening, it can be made 2 high, it can be made 3 high. You can make it to where you can put like the 3 stack on one side, a couple of 2 stacks in the middle, and another 3 stack on the other side. And the ones in the middle can be made to house some of your media, but also have your turntables on top and room for your phono preamp, that type of thing. Now, that's just kind of just a straight box, if you will. I'm currently working on a design that would be that center console that would be 3 drawers wide, 2 drawers high. So it would have 6 record drawers in it, but the top is designed to fit 2 large turntables and phono preamp. But instead of being just a square boxes, this one is in a mid-century modern design.
Huh. Can't wait to see that.
Yeah, and then so I can do other designs. Like the other one that I would like to do is more of what's called a craftsman or a mission style furniture as well. So I'm kind of moving more into furniture aspects of your room as well as the cabinets, because my cabinets are basically furniture pieces.
Yeah.
Plus I build stands. I design and make speaker stands for them as also.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
of the speaker stands have subwoofer.
I
Go ahead.
remember seeing at the show last time, I remember seeing your storage units where you had the records in them. But tell me a little more.
Uh-huh.
I remember you mentioned that connection method that you used for when you made the roll top mechanism. Tell me more about
Oh,
that.
well, traditionally, Tambour doors are made by cutting the basically 3/4 inch rectangular slats. Then you make a jig where you completely enclose those slats. Excuse me.
Bless you.
And then you put glue on them and you glue a piece of canvas to the back of them. And then before the glue is fully set up, you kind of take it out and break them out, bend them a little bit so that the slats don't stick together. And then that is how the timbres stick together and gives them the ability to move. Over time, and we're talking, a decade or 2 here or more. We're not talking a year, but that canvas can and eventually will rot out, and then you have to repair it. Well, I came across a method that uses a particular set of router bits with a router table and your table saw. And so you mill your lumber up to the size you need them. And that's where you're going to be using planers, shape, joiners, planers, that type of thing to get your lumber to the right dimensions that you want it. Then you go back and forth between your table saw and one saw bit, and then the other router bit, the other router bit. And what you end up doing is you create a set where you have a ball and socket joint on each
Right.
timbre.
So it
So the
turns like
bottom of it
that.
has a socket joint. The top of each timbre has a ball joint, and they slide together.
Yeah.
then that allows them to still move and still be able to flow around your track, but there is no glue in them.
So
So
cool.
there's no canvas to route over time or anything else. And whereas the drawer, the uh, cabinet itself is made out of Baltic birch plywood, and that can be then veneered over. The Tambour doors are solid hardwood. It doesn't work trying to do those with plywood. Plywood will
Sure.
just disintegrate.
Right, yeah, I can see that. Man, I'm so impressed with that. But yeah, another thing I saw, in your rooms at Lone Star, was some of the turntables that you had. Tell us about those.
Yeah, I've gotten into the idea of building custom plinths for vintage turntables. And a friend of mine got me started down that road because he had an old 1960s era Rico cut Rondine Jr., which Rico cut is a company, US company. They originally made cutting lathes for LPs. And then they started making what it's called transcription tables. Those are the tables that were used commercially in radio stations. And they have a number of different models. The Rondine Jr. he gave me was one of their smallest models. So I designed a plinth for that. And then I also sought out and got a hold of a vintage micro Siki tone arm to go with it. So I designed a plinth that would hug kind of tight. I initially designed it to be a big rectangle that could hold anywhere from you could have anywhere from 1 to 3 tone arms on it. And when I cut the first top plate of that out of 3/4 inch MDF, because it's the prototype, I picked that up and said, there ain't no way that anybody's going to be able to lift this sucker when it's done. Uh, So I went back to the drawing board and I redesigned it to where it will hold 2 tone arms at the back. And then I cut a lot of that out in the center. So instead of being a big rectangle, it's more of a Y shape. So it comes in really tight around the turntable itself and then spreads out on the Ys for the arm boards. And the arm boards are designed, they're removable. I designed them to where you could put anywhere from a 9-inch to the longest 12-inch tone arm I could find the schematics for, or the specifications for, which is 310 millimeter from pivot to spindle distance. So that one arm board can be drilled for anything up to that. And right now I've got a 9-inch arm on one, and I don't have the second arm on that one yet, but that's the design for it. That one was also designed in what's called a constrained layer damping, which means you've got multiple different materials with different densities, different resonant frequencies that the vibrations have to pass through. Every time they change, you have an interface, they bleed off more energy. So the concept is that you have a top layer that's very dense, very stiff. You have a center layer that's a different resonant frequency that's less dense. Then you have another very dense layer at the bottom. Now on this particular one, the density is on that top and bottom layers. I don't think I could get anything hardly more dense because it's Panzerholz. If anybody, for those that are familiar with
Yeah.
Panzerholz, for those that aren't, it's German manufactured wood. It means tank wood. It's many, many layers of beech ply that are compressed with phenolic resin at extremely high pressures, to the point that when you look at the layers on the side, you have to squint to see the individual layers that had once been layers of beech ply. They're compressed so much. And yes, they have been used on Panzer tanks for armor. It's also used in high-end motorsports, uh, even as skid plates and stuff. So it's very tough. It's very durable. It's very heavy. The top and bottom pieces alone, those pieces weigh 25 pounds each. And the center section weighs about 35 pounds or so. That's 7 layers of MDF. On that one, the thickness or the depth of that center layer is dictated by the size of the motor that's in the turntable. That particular Rico cut has a motor that's about a good 6 inches deep, if not more. So a very big motor, very robust motor. And in this case, the other thing is you don't want your layers to be mechanically connected to each other. So all of the turntable itself, the tone arm, those all bolt into that top layer. Nothing mechanically connects it to the center layer. The bottom layer is where the isolation footers, the threaded inserts for the isolation footers are. And so the isolation footers are only connected to the bottom layer, nothing physically connecting it to the center layer. Then each of those two interfaces are separated by an 1/8 inch layer of sorbithane. So
Yeah.
there's, all in all, the plinth itself weighs 75 or 80 pounds. The turntable, when it's all put together, is closer to 100 pounds. And it's moved because it all comes apart and gets moved in pieces. That I designed and built that one for last year's show. And then during the following year, leading up to this year's show, I acquired a Garrard 401, which is a British transcription table used in European audio or radio stations, and it's one of the classics. The Garrard 301, the Garrard 401 are the classics. And so I designed a plinth for that one that's a little different. It's still a high mass plinth. It's not a constrained layer damping. It's all one material, which is all MDF, multiple layers of MDF. The tone arm board is still removable, but it's only designed for a 9-inch board. Now, a 9-inch tone arm.
Yeah.
Now, if you wanted a longer tone arm on that, the arm board could be redesigned where it extended out past the perimeter of the turntable itself to accommodate a larger one, or the whole turntable could be redesigned to house that longer arm board. And then that one is veneered with a spalted maple. The Y-shaped one is the raw, top and bottom layer is raw Panzerholz, so you can actually see that it is in fact Panzerholz, and it looks kind of neat as in its natural state. The center section is veneered with a Carillion birch with a gloss finish on it. The 401, the spalted maple, has a more of a matte hard wax oil finish on it. So that's just different techniques I can use, different finishes. And then I'm going to be expanding for next year's show. I'm going to have at least 1 or 2 more on the turntables. If somebody wants a turntable, if I already have that turntable, like they want me to make them a plinth for a Garrard 401 or for this Rico cut, I can do that. They don't have to send me anything. If they want me to make a plinth, a custom plinth for a turntable I don't have, they'll have to send me the table, because I can't just go off of the drawings for the table. It gets you close, but it doesn't get it to where things fit exactly right. It takes multiple prototypes to get all of the different nooks and crannies and cutouts for those turntables exactly the way they need to be. Because the idea of a high mass or higher mass plinth isn't that it's just a box around the outside. Each of those layers, you start at the top, you've got your most open space because that's the most stuff from the turntable that goes in it. As you go down, you've got less and less stuff protruding deeper into it, so the plinth comes in tighter on each of the layers. And then the bottom layer is always left open so that you have airflow and you don't burn up your motors.
I'm so impressed with that because you're right. I mean, all these years, it seems the things that everybody had to work with are try to keep that turntable as heavy as possible. They're using mass to try to keep the thing stable. And then, of course, isolation to keep from, vibrations coming from the room. And what you've done is impressive to me because you've added, the constrained layer approach and then the fact that it's disassemblable so you can carry the thing. I'm used to that kind of stuff in loudspeakers because, we have damping, we have to brace the cabinets. And so I'm familiar with that in loudspeakers, but it was real impressive to me to see you doing it in the turntables too. That's cool.
And then we also have I put threaded inserts such so that people can put isolation footers underneath it. So you have the mass and you have isolation the same. And the type of isolation you have is determined by which product you choose to use as your isolation footer. When it comes to racks and cabinets, I'm in the school of build the rack solid, sturdy, the size you need it, but I don't worry about damping properties of the materials in the rack itself
Sure.
because I've got the isolation footers. So that's what's doing the energy dissipation and the vibration isolation.
Yes, I can sure understand that. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about I know that since you're doing custom work, you can't expect to get an order and turn it out, within a week or two. Talk to me about
Not
your
even close.
yeah, I know. Talk to me about that thing.
I'm
You're doing custom work, so tell everybody about that.
okay. It's custom work. I'm one person working out of a 400 square foot garage with enough tools in it for a 1,600 square foot shop. So for me to move around, it's like I need to use my turntable. I have to take stuff off of, my table saw. I got to take stuff off of the top of it that I'm using as a table, move it over to something else, either a build table or my CNC machine, cut what I need. Then if I have to go back to the CNC machine, I take everything off it, go back over. So one guy in a small shop, and I have a full-time day job.
Right.
And that's like right now. So basically I have an 6 to 8 month backlog right now. So if somebody wanted something today, I couldn't even start on it until January or February. So you're easily looking 8 months to a year for a custom build.
Yeah.
And if it's something that I have to do a lot of prototyping on, then it might take longer.
Yeah. I could see that. I mean, again, you're a custom shop. You're not a production shop. You don't put things on a production line where everything's cookie cutter and it comes out looking the same. Just like you talked about earlier with the different I mean, you're picking out different veneers and wood stocks and talking with the customer and getting the look just right. Then you're into building these things, which takes quite a bit of time because it's a custom shop. So when you order something from your shop, I know because I've worked with you, it takes a little while, but then what you get out of it is it's a one of one. There's not any others just like that. So I think it's important for
Right.
people to know that you order from Uilleam Audio, it's not going to come for 6 months, but you're getting something that is unique. That's cool.
Right. And even most of the cabinets, the speaker cabinets I build, are all from someone that designs DIY kits. Your kits, GR Research. I've built one from the CSS Audio, their Crichton, for a client that was in Oman, Jordan. Uh, I've built one for a client that was called a Fidelia, which is out of England. But I am not an engineer. I do not design speakers. So I'm building somebody else's speakers that they design. Can I make a modification? Maybe a little bit, but nothing that's going to affect like the baffle size or the spacings or anything else, because I can't make any changes that affect the design, especially what would
Sure,
affect the design of the crossovers or anything else.
sure.
Uh, if somebody has a set of plans, a cabinet plans they want me to build, and they have legal right to build those plans, I can do that.
You bet.
But I don't design speakers. Wouldn't even know how.
Right,
Don't
right.
want to learn.
You're building the cabinets, you're a custom cabinet maker, and you depend on the engineers to design them, and then you build what to spec. I just think I'm so
Correct.
impressed with you, Mike. I've seen your work over the years. It's gorgeous. And let's when I know people can come see you at Lone Star Audiofest, but other than that, how can they get a hold of?
Uh, they can email me. I have my website is uilleamaudio.com, UILLEAM audio.com, and there's a contact page there. Or you can email me at mike@uilleamaudio.com.
Okay. Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, yeah, again, I'm really impressed with you, and I can't wait to see your next stuff at the next Lone Star Audio Fest.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I just hope I get it all done.
Boy, I know that feeling. All right. Well, I think
I,
I've
I usually
go ahead.
I usually spend so much time working on other people's stuff, I don't have time to design and build new stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of like the mechanics in their cars. I know what you mean. All right. Well, Mike, it sure was a pleasure chatting with you, and I hope to see you soon.
Same here. Take it easy, Wayne.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.